Stop buying bad RAM. Let's get you the best RAM for gaming 2026. Welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. Now, buying the best RAM for gaming in 2026, it's complicated. Prices exploded late last year. And even with RAM prices now coming down, it feels hard getting the best RAM for your PC without massively overspending. But you're in luck. In this 2026 RAM buying survival guide, we're going to stop you from overspending. We're going to tell you everything you need to know to get the best RAM in 2026 and help find some amazing RAM deals for your next PC Builder upgrade. If you get value out of this video, please give it a like, of course, subscribe for more cool PC content. Let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by Seasonic. For PC enthusiasts looking for ultimate performance, Seasonic's flagship Prime TX 1300 delivers. ATX 3.1 and PCIe 5.1 compatible with 1300 watts powering even the most insane PC builds. The Prime TX 1300 now comes with an updated 12-volt 2x6 cables for increased safety and reliability with RTX 50 series GPUs. And Seasonic's digital fan control means the PSU stays cool and quiet under load. If you were looking for no compromises performance in power, thermals, and noise, check out Seasonic Prime TX 1300 using the link in the video description. All right, let's start off with those 2026 RAM prices. Now, at the time of filming, RAM prices are beginning to come down. I do a regular video series looking at pricing and whether you should buy now or wait, and I will leave that link down in the video description. At the time of filming this video, a 2-stick 16GB kit of DDR4, it's running about $125. A 2-stick 32GB DDR4 kit has fallen back under $200. A 16GB 2-stick kit of DDR5 runs just over $200, and a 32GB kit of DDR5 runs about $370. Now, while I'm hopeful that these prices represent the high water mark for the RAM crisis, it will likely take a while for prices to come back to a more sane level, and we may never see extremely cheap prices that we had in mid-2025. But here's the good news. Because RAM prices are high, PC building is down, and most other PC parts have fallen dramatically as a result. In most regions, you can also find really good RAM combo deals, which bring RAM prices back to pre-crisis levels. In the US, Newegg in particular has a lot of really good deals, and they ship. I'll leave links to their DDR4 and DDR5 combo deals in the video description for you to check out. If you're in the US and you can get to a micro center, they offer pretty incredible in-store combo deals. And I put together a spreadsheet of retailers outside the US that are offering similar deals for you to check out. Though I haven't had the time to fully vet all the deals just yet, it's a pretty good place to start. For instance, this Newegg budget build RAM combo deal offers a Ryzen 5500 CPU, a good B550 motherboard, and a 16GB kit of DDR4 RAM for $254. If you took the cheapest 16GB DDR4 kit right now at $120 with these same items, it would cost you about $35 more. For 16GB DDR5 kits, you can get this Newegg combo with an RGB DDR5 16GB kit, a Ryzen 7600X CPU, a good B650 motherboard, and a 240mm all-in-one liquid cooler for $430. The fair market value of the cooler is actually about $50, so this combo makes the RAM cost only about $70. The best value 32GB DDR5 kits are bundled with higher-end CPUs, like this Ryzen 9800X3D combo with a Corsair 32GB DDR5 kit, X870 Tomahawk motherboard, and 240mm AIO cooler, along with a free game. I'm not going to include the game since it comes with the CPU even if you don't buy the combo. And the cooler, it's really about $50 fair market value. So if you total everything up, the RAM kit comes out to $195. That is half the current price of similar 32GB DDR5 kits. And this Corsair kit would have cost you about $120 even before the RAM crisis. Now, obviously, pricing is going to continue to evolve, so check the links in the video description for the current best combo deals. So given the price of RAM, how much RAM do you actually need for your gaming in 2026? Testing by TechSpot found that with essentially unlimited memory available, most games ran under 16GB for the entire system, though some were quite tight. While most games ran just fine on a system with 16GB of RAM, there were a handful of AAA titles that occasionally micro-stuttered on this amount. It wasn't game-breaking, but it did happen occasionally. One title that could have more issues was Hogwarts Legacy, where in busy areas of the map with 16GB of RAM, systems there could have a more significant drop in FPS and stutters. So while 16GB is likely enough for gaming, and game developers are very aware now of the RAM crisis and they are further optimizing games for lesser hardware, it is possible in the future we'll see titles that won't play as nice with 16GB. So here's my overall advice. For budget gamers using DDR4 RAM, I would personally opt for a 16GB kit because DDR4 systems usually run fine with 4 sticks of RAM. So in the future, you can opt to buy an identical kit to the one you have and upgrade to 32GB. For DDR5 systems, because DDR5 memory controllers generally don't do well with 4-stick configurations, I only recommend 2 sticks maximum for DDR5. If you can fit a 32GB RAM kit into your budget, that's the ideal. But I would not sacrifice GPU or CPU power to get that RAM amount. And I personally would opt for a 16GB DDR5 kit to save money, especially if I got a combo deal with the CPU and other items in it. In the future, you will likely need to buy a new 32GB kit of RAM, but we're talking a couple years down the road when we expect RAM prices to be much better, and future CPUs may actually want faster RAM anyway. So budget builders, grab 16GB of DDR4, mid-range, grab 16GB of DDR5 is totally fine. If you've got the money at the higher end, 32GB of DDR5 is the ideal. Don't waste your money on more than 32GB of RAM for a gaming PC build in 2026. So what RAM speed do you need for your CPU choice to get the best price to performance? Well, when RAM was cheap, I emphasized getting the highest performance kit for your CPU because the price difference, it was at most $20 to $30. That's not bad to pick up 2 or 3% performance. But with some RAM kits costing significantly more than others, my advice, get the best kit that you can without overspending. You're going to get better performance spending that extra money on upgrading your GPU or your CPU instead. Previously, DDR5 6000CL30, that was the best price to performance for Ryzen AM5 systems like Ryzen 7000 and 9000. Though to be fair, the X3D CPUs, they just don't care very much due to their huge amount of Vcache. Intel 12th through 14th gen, and even the new Core Ultra 200S Plus CPUs like the Ultra 5 250K and Ultra 7 270K Plus, they find similar results with DDR5 6000CL30, but they can benefit a little bit more with even faster RAM. So how much worse is slower RAM? Well, looking at previous RAM performance testing done by TechSpot, aka Hardware Unboxed, with a Ryzen 7700X, the difference in performance at 1080p with an RTX 4090 across 7 games was only 8.5% between the sweet spot DDR5 6000CL30 kit and a DDR5 6000CL40 slower kit. And remember that using a slower GPU or turning up the resolution to 1440p or 4K, that might erase even that margin. That isn't much performance to lose if it saves you $50 to $100. 13th and 14th gen Intel platforms cared even less, with only about a 5.6% difference between DDR5 6000CL30 and even the slower DDR5 5200CL40 kit. So my advice across the board for DDR5 Intel and Ryzen CPUs is that DDR5 5200CL40 or faster, that's likely fine. And many of the kits I'm seeing are around 6000CL38 or 36. Of course, if you can find DDR5 6000CL30 or a 6400CL32 kit for a similar price, yes, then get the better RAM. Remember for DDR5 to turn on XMP on Intel systems and either XMP or EXPO on AM5 Ryzen systems to get the full rated speed in the BIOS. On AM5 Ryzen systems, we found no performance difference between XMP and EXPO, and all the motherboards will use either one. Note that while virtually every DDR5 RAM kit is compatible and tested with AM5 Ryzen CPUs, there may be some kits that aren't compatible with some Intel platforms, so just double check the product listing before you buy it. For DDR4 CPUs, I recommend getting DDR4 3200CL16 if you can, and 3600CL18 if you can't find 3200 speed kits. And the same goes for turning on XMP or DOCP timings in the BIOS to get the full rated speed. But the good news is that DDR4 compatibility, it's pretty widespread, and kits will work with either AM4 Ryzen CPUs like the Ryzen 5500 or Intel 12th, 13th, or 14th gen CPUs like the i5-12400F. Okay, so how do you tell which RAM kit is actually faster when comparing speed and timings? Is a DDR5 6400CL32 kit faster than DDR5 6000CL30? And if so, by how much? Well, just like the CPU, RAM operates on clock cycles. RAM for modern PCs is double data rate, DDR, meaning that RAM transfers data twice during each clock cycle. And here's the part that so many people get wrong. RAM speed is in mega transfers, not megahertz. When you buy 6000 speed RAM, that speed is in mega transfers, and it runs at a clock speed of 3000 megahertz. And because it transfers data twice per clock cycle, 3000 megahertz times 2 equals the 6000 megatransfers. Now, where this gets confusing for folks is when users check diagnostic software like CPU-Z or in their BIOS, and they see 6000 speed memory running at 3000 megahertz, and they think, oh no, something's wrong. In fact, so many people refer to RAM speed mistakenly in megahertz that some motherboard manufacturers actually label the RAM speed in megahertz in the BIOS, even though that's technically incorrect. So hopefully this helps you navigate any confusion. Now, the second part of determining the RAM speed is called the CAS latency, often abbreviated as either C or CL, followed by a number. CAS latency is the number of clock cycles the RAM takes to do something. So the lower the cache latency, the faster the RAM can get things done. So when thinking about RAM speed, we generally want a fast speed and a low cache latency. There are other subtimings, of course, but this one is typically the most important to pay attention to. All right, so now that we know that, how do you compare speed of different RAM kits? Say one at DDR5 6000 CL30 and the other one at 6400 CL32. The most common way is to calculate the absolute latency of the kits, and the one with the lowest absolute latency, that's the fastest. Now the way we do this is to multiply the cache latency by 2000, then divide that number by the RAM speed. For the 6400 CL32 kit, multiplying 32 times 2000 gives us 64,000. Then we divide that by our 6400 speed, which gives us 10. Now that number's in nanoseconds, so 10 nanoseconds is the absolute latency. For the 6000 CL30 kit, we multiply 30 times 2000, which is 60,000. Then we divide that by 6000 speed, which is also 10. So both kits are 10 nanoseconds, and they are essentially the same speed. If we had a DDR5 6000 CL28 kit, we'd find that kit had an absolute latency of 9.33 nanoseconds, which would be faster than the other kits. Now warning, because RAM is designed to be overclocked, many users get confused when they look at their CPU or motherboard specs, and the maximum RAM speed is listed as a much lower number. Remember, those specs are the stock settings, and do-it-yourself PC builds, and even pre-builds, are designed to use the one-click overclocking profiles, and that's why the numbers are different. In full disclosure, both AMD and Intel include statements that any overclocking, even the use of one-click profiles, may void your warranty. However, both companies have a don't ask, don't tell policy regarding overclocking, and for over a decade have honored their warranties in these situations. So my advice here, go ahead and use the one-click overclocking profiles and trust, if needed, they'll honor your warranty. But if you want, you can stick to the stock rated speeds. Now, how many sticks of RAM should you buy? RAM is typically sold in kits of 2 sticks, and those sticks are called DIMMs. That's D-I-M-M. But I'm just gonna refer to them as sticks for simplicity. For new builds, I recommend a 2-stick configuration for both DDR4 and DDR5. Now, running a single stick of RAM, that limits your overall bandwidth, and it will cost you FPS. I don't recommend that for DDR4. For DDR5, you can consider doing it with a 16GB stick with the intention of buying an identical stick sometime in the future to upgrade to 32GB. I don't really recommend this though, because by the time you factor in your lost FPS for over a year or more to maybe save $50 and the increased compatibility risk, it just doesn't seem to make sense. I also do not recommend 4-stick configurations for new builds in 2026. For DDR4, it's just not really cost effective. For DDR5, the CPU memory controllers for the currently available platforms just cannot handle it effectively at the speeds we want to run without manual tuning and extensive stability testing, and you basically risk your stability of your system. Remember to check those combo deals linked down in the video description to get current pricing and availability. We've got tons of other guides linked in our How to Build a PC playlist in the video description, along with CPU-based build guides and the best builds right now in our PC builds playlist. So check those out. If you got value out of this video, please give it a like, and of course subscribe for more cool PC content. Like, did you check out our best GPUs to buy in 2026, both new and used based on price to performance? It's right here, best GPUs in 2026. And we'll catch you on the next one.